Tonight, Syria's President Bashar al-Assad is calling for a national vote on a new draft constitution that he says contains major reforms. Critics, frankly, just say it's window dressing. Activists say at least 32 more people were killed today. This little boy, take a look at this video, running from sniper fire in Dara, where all this began. You can hear the shots being fired. A man runs after him, carries the boys to safety. Video from a Damascus suburb apparently shows civilians being forced to stand and lie down next to an army tank. Activists say it's to serve as human shields. We can't verify these reports firsthand because the Assad regime won't let us in. We weren't there. Today, CNN's Arwa Damon, however, is there in Homs. Here's what she says. I know you saw a patient who had a brain injury. Pieces of this man's brain had come out of his head, and they basically just sewed back his head up just to keep it inside and had some sort of a tube in there. But he desperately needed to get out and will die if he doesn't.
He will, and he's not the only one in there that's in that kind of dire condition. There was another young volunteer at the clinic, actually, who had been injured in one of the strikes on the clinic itself, and he was in an incredibly difficult situation. We actually later on heard that he had died. He didn't make it, and that is quite simply because he wasn't able to receive the medical care that he so desperately needed. And the nurse that was tending to him, she was just 27 years old. She was also a volunteer, and she was crying out, wanting to know how it was that the international community could watch human beings continuously die and do nothing. And she pointed to this young man caressing his head and was saying, this is a human being. This is not something that is made of stone. Life has value. How is it in the 21st century that the world can watch and let this type of massacre take place?
Or you've covered a lot of places where violence is happening and suffering is happening. How does this compare?
It doesn't, Anderson. It really doesn't. I mean, on the one hand, yes, in covering all of these conflicts, you come across death, you come across sorrow, you come across atrocities, but what we've witnessed happening inside Syria is not compared to anything that has taken place in any other country, whether you compare it to the other revolutions that we saw happening across the Middle East or the other types of violence in various other conflict zones. What's happening here, it's very difficult to put it into words, Anderson. The level of despair, what's happening, how one-sided this war, and it is now a war, really is. What you sense is that you have a massive entity, this power that is the Syrian government, using every single tool at its disposal to crush this opposition that really, as they put it, have just been crying out for freedom. And we hear all these stories of children being mercilessly massacred at the hands of the regime, of no one being spared. And you really just can't compare it to